especially the subparts. Push the subparts button.
Hello to a new episode of ReptilTV, my intro little animal. The clever observer notices, why is this thing called ReptilTV when he has a spider on his hand? They can of course also belong to the torbarian animals, Avicularia, variegate. So the aves, they are always incredibly beautiful, very colorful, and always nice, or almost always well behaved. And the professional for all the spiders is Urs Haag here. Urs, I think you should introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Urs Haag. I am the owner of Exotenzucht Haag, as you can see nicely on my t-shirt. I have been dealing with terroristics for over 30 years. I got my first tarantula when I was 12 years old. The focus has always been on spiders, but I am also fond of a few exotic animals. And for 20 years now we have had our business, our Exotenzucht Haag. Next year, 2024, we will celebrate our 20th anniversary. And I am not doing this alone, but here with my daughter. You can't see her right now because she is holding the camera. And with my wife, but you will get to know her later. Yes, and Mr. Stefan asked me if we could do an episode together, or rather 2 episodes. And the idea is simply to show you our breeding a bit in general in the first part. In the second part, we want to specifically address the breeding and care of Theraphosa species, as that is the focus of our business. Focus in the truest sense of the word, because the Theraphosa are the largest and heaviest tarantulas.
Yes, cool. I think we have found the perfect location here to finally do something about spiders. Many of you always ask if we do anything with tarantulas, and today is the day, and now it begins.
So, now let's take a look at the first breeding room. Come on in. Okay. So in this room we mainly have Avicularia species. In the glass terrariums there are breeding females everywhere, a total of 170 in this room. As mentioned, various Avicularia species. Our intro little creature from before can be found there, the variegate. I need to take a closer look. This one here, was it called Claudia or Agate or...
You haven't got them all. No. We have long since passed that time. I was distracted. What is that to you? How many breeding females did you say?
There are 170 in the room.
Okay, then it will of course be difficult if you had to imagine 170 females. Do you have the rooms? Is it more or less random, or do you have the climate different as well?
The rooms are practically specialized for the species that are present here. In terms of temperature, Avicularia species prefer it quite warm. This means we have an average temperature of 28 degrees during the day. That's why mainly these species that require such warmth are kept here. And other species like Theraphosa or something, do you have those? Exactly, we will find them later in the other room. Maybe cooler, okay? I'm jumping ahead now.
Let's take a quick look. Since we are here, we naturally want to see some beautiful animals. Here is the classic Avi. Then we have the Caribena, versicolor species here. If you feel the same way as I do, the versicolor was always known under the name Avicularia versicolor, and now it is called Caribena, right?
Exactly, right.
Caribena versicolor. I should check that the panes don't reflect too much. Let's take this one.
What else might be there, Stefan? That's better.
What stands out to me right now is metallica, which has always been a classic, or was. Do you not have any, or are they no longer available?
Yes, I have them over here. However, not many. We only have 3 left.
I remember earlier, we actually also sold a lot of tarantulas. I always had the impression that all the truly dedicated heavy Metallica fans really wanted to have a Metallica and a Metallica. I believe that just the name Metallica was already decisive. I need a Metallica. But they are certainly beautiful animals. Just briefly, how do you distinguish a Metallica from, for example, Avicularia Avicularia?
That is what you need to know about it. Many sell Avicularia Avicularia as Metallica due to similar bluish species. So let's put it this way. I'm going to get K2 and move out of here, whether she wants to or not. Of course not.
For the community in general, if you destroy her web a bit now while you're fiddling around in it, it's not a big deal. She'll have it repaired by tomorrow.
She'll have it repaired by tomorrow? We also consider it possible to handle the animals within the limits here. I'm really doing this just to show you. So a real Avicularia metallica comes from French Guiana, from the area around Cayenne, which is the capital. These white hair tips, as you can see here on the legs and on the abdomen, are relatively large for an Avicularia. This is a medium-sized Avicularia species, and they have none or only very, very little of this reddish hair. If we take another look at such an avi-avi, they remain smaller overall. Avicularia can also jump really well, as we just saw here. They remain smaller overall, and later, as we will see, have a distinct reddish hair, which they do not have here. Okay, let's put them back in. If we now go over to the other avi-avi enclosure here, and we can take a look at such an animal. We don't even need to take it out. I think we can see it quite well like this. Then you can see up here, this rather reddish hair, both on the legs and at the back of the abdomen, that is, on the hind body. If you look closely, you probably can't see it very well in this light. I'll use the flashlight for that. Now you can see the rather reddish hair, and you can see that the animal is simply much smaller than the other.
The size is, of course, immediately noticeable, and the hair, you would probably have to describe it as a layperson like me or like the next viewer, we need to hold the pictures directly next to each other for comparison.
Exactly. The problem with the whole story is that, of course, with tarantulas, there is a strong effort to keep the species pure and not to pair any theoretically compatible species with each other. And when people offer the animals under the wrong name, it becomes a bit difficult in the market. That's why we pay close attention to ensure that it is also...
Exactly, it fits. So an avi-avi man would probably get mixed up with a metallica.
Because they are so closely related in terms of evolution that they can actually reproduce with each other.
Then we would have some hybrids, which is of course not the point. Yes? Nice.
We are now actually at the end of the breeding season for the Apicularia in July, but we still have some coconuts. For example, if we take a look inside, we currently have an AWI where the babies have just hatched. They are now hanging up there. My wife will take it out later and then place it in the appropriate U-box. But the season is almost over. So there are still a few cow-cow with the females here, but most are done.
So the cow-cow stays with the female?
With the Avicularias, exactly, we let the cow-cow stay with the female because she can manage it much better than we could. And after about 8 weeks, at the temperature we have here, the babies hatch, and then we collect the babies.
Then you take them out.
Exactly, then we collect them, and then it works like this for us. Up here you can still see the animals from the season that have not been sold yet. I'll just take down a pallet now. And there you can practically see the offspring that have already been separated. Each box is always a cocoon. And now we see the young animals. They will stay here together until just before the first molting. And then they are placed individually or have already arrived at the customer when they are sold.
This is the first feeding skin.
Exactly, you can see it here. They are currently molting or have already done so. This is already the second skin. It's time for us to separate them. Because over time, at the latest, from the second feeding skin, they start to eat each other.
Okay, now, they are in the first feeding skin and in the second feeding skin. Then it goes into the...
Exactly, so when they are then separated, it practically continues in this size range. It looks like this. These are breeding containers specifically for Tree-dwelling tarantulas. They have good ventilation.
But you are still putting 2 of them in there. The word is indeed.
This is the skin. This is the neck size. These are holdbacks for the reptile keepers. Animals that we use for breeding. We raise them like this. Up here, for example, you see animals that will be in future breeding generations in 2 years. These are offspring from 21. From different species, you can see that the containers are one size larger. And you can see that the animals have also grown accordingly.
So how old is the animal now?
21. So just under 1.5 to 2 years. Almost 2 years, okay. That is then the next growth size.
Okay. Let's perhaps quickly go to the next room.
We don't have to walk far. Just through this door. This is the first.
It will get a bit cooler here when you come in.
In this room, we now have both 170 breeding females of various species and a lot of offspring. Either holdbacks again or actual animals that are for sale. I'll just briefly explain what we have here. We have Monocentropus balfouri here, the top 2 rows. In the meantime, a very interesting social species from Yemen. I think I need to organize a bit better lighting for Stefan here. Super beautiful, freshly molted female. Nice blue coloring. And up here you can see that a cocoon has just hatched in the next terrarium. You can see the tiny babies crawling on top of each other. What is super interesting about this species is that it is actually the only species that is really very socially compatible and also interacts socially with each other. Specifically, when the mother catches a prey here, all the tiny little babies will later go there and eat the prey together with the mother.
Okay. So the mother is eating a grasshopper.
Exactly. She starts to digest it practically. That is, in front of the mouth, in front of the labium. Because the spider has a sucking stomach and cannot take in solid food. And the young ones then go there and participate in the feeding process.
Oh, really?
Exactly.
And up to what feeding rate?
They can be kept together completely, so they are very compatible. In fact, they can be cared for in larger groups until adulthood.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And do they still eat together? Because it can't be that they...
So it is actually observed that medium-sized animals sometimes hunt a larger prey together. But the large animals, of course, need it. So then the food jealousy starts at some point.
But now medium animals, a similar animal, one hunts in the whole family. Exactly. So one with his 47 siblings, exactly, hangs on the prey. Oh, that's crazy. I didn't know that either. Down there it continues with Pamphobeteus. I see. Exactly, this is the Pamphobeteus antinous from Peru. Pamphobeteus is also impressive due to its size, ultimately.
So the females are monochromatic, with a red abdomen, red abdominal hair, and a black base color. Actually beautiful in terms of contrast, but it is of course not super spectacular. But they grow large, and what is very interesting about them is that the males are beautiful. The adult males are then blue, purple in some species. Super interesting coloring. Pamphobeteus antinous. On the side, it continues here with various Xenesthis species. I believe we have a total of 40 females. These are of course also super colorful animals. This is now the so-called spec blue because they have a bluish sheen when they are freshly molted. By the way, we try to set up the terrariums in a somewhat natural way, but it is already the case that it is easy to care for us. With the number of animals, it is of course also about being able to work efficiently and take good care of the animals.
I briefly mentioned the cardboard lid here. Yes, exactly.
If a cardboard lid is visible here, then the animal has a cocoon. So if we shine a light in there now, we can see it quite well. This is practically this ice sac. And the cardboard lid simply serves the function of allowing the animals to have some peace when we are walking or working around here, so they are not too disturbed.
There is always the risk of tearing the cocoon. Exactly.
So if an animal is disturbed too much, it will eat its cocoon. Yes, then we can go around the corner. Here we start with the first Theraphosis. These are Theraphosa apophysis. We will see many more later. Now let's go around the corner. Here are our Asian tube dwellers. We keep them here in the bucket because the animals require a correspondingly high substrate as they really create relatively deep burrows in nature. And what is super spectacular about these animals, I will just open a bucket, is that they actually live completely underground in nature and only come to the cave entrance in the evening at dusk to wait for and hunt prey. And there are species of them that have absolutely fascinating coloring. Like this one here, this is the so-called Ornithoctoninae, species from Vietnam, silver, so a very striking silver coloration. I don't know if you can see it well in the video. Yes, you can see it already, but it is a relatively newly discovered species from Vietnam. Okay. And it is, of course, really a question of why evolution has come up with such beautiful colors for animals that are actually crepuscular and nocturnal, or rather spend their entire lives underground.
It sits in the hole and has the most beautiful colors.
Exactly.
And no one knows why. It would actually kill it in brown. You're right. That is, of course, an interesting question.
Here we have received different breeding females. We are currently working on building something up in the coming years. Spec stands for species, meaning it is still an undetermined type. Generally, if the genus level is already determined, then we have the genus at the front. Then comes this spec, and in the second part, we often include some fantasy names the person who first brought the animal to market created. Or actually the area of origin or something to clearly identify the animal. This way, the species can be passed on in trade with the same designation. And this remains in place until these species have been scientifically described. And then this genus name is carefully checked again in a systematic manner. The actual name of the person who describes the animal is then assigned to this name.
And it simply has to do with the fact that new species of spiders, tarantulas, are still being discovered.
Yes, absolutely. When we now have, I would say, around 1,000 described species, but there are very, very many, and new ones are discovered almost every month, actually every year.
Around 1,000 described tarantula species. Okay, interesting.
This is Grammostola brucher, also more of a classic. These are the completely black ones. Black are beautiful animals from Uruguay.
Black is always a reliable choice. In general, it's no different with spiders than with reptiles as a color choice.
If you take a quick look down here again, we have another highlight from the burrowers. This is also a species from Vietnam. It is now called Ornithoctoninae spec ho-chi-minh, simply because it comes from Vietnam. So it is now, of course, sitting in its hole, but I will try to get it out for a moment. Exactly, it will come out right now. There it is. So now take a look at this. Super beautiful. Golden coloring here.
Aha. So the previously silver one is the gold barrier here.
And it is also an animal that is absolutely a ground dweller here. It mainly exists in nature in sloped areas where it makes its burrows. It comes from the north of Vietnam. But it also has really super beautiful coloring. I don't know if it can be seen well on camera, but the carapace, that is, this cover, on top where the eyes are, is really in the finest gold. Indeed, one can generally say that ground dwellers are a bit, well, rather not for touching, but rather for watching. Yes, what is important here, what one must know, especially about the Asian and African species, is that they do not have stinging hairs. This means that the only defense strategy of these species is the venomous bite. And that's why these animals bite significantly faster than South American species like our Avicularia or larger Brachypelmas or Grammostola, whichever you prefer. They have stinging hairs. This means they can first shed their hairs and thus influence the attacker, while Asians can only bite. Therefore, do not approach with your fingers. Okay. Exactly. Yes, good. Then let's go one step further or take a quick look here. Now we have different species of Xenesthis, also a really beautiful species. Here is the so-called spec white. This is also a yet undescribed species that is sold under the name spec white. Now you might be wondering why it's called white when it is actually black and purple here. This is because the young spiders essentially have very white legs, and that's why this name was simply chosen.
The Xenesthis immonis is well known. It has been around forever. It is also black with purple on top of the carapace.
We have them here in the east, for example, but we don't see them beautifully here. Some of the Xenesthis species have this contrasting purple on the carapace. So let's take a look at the next room. Here we mainly have, or actually exclusively, Poecilotheria and Caribena in this room. A total of 50 female Poecilotheria, most of them metallica, and about 40 to, I believe, 45 female Caribena versicolor. Okay. The room is designed to ideally represent the climatic conditions that the animals need to thrive and to breed them properly. And how come you are now focusing on metallica, respectively?
Versicolor do you have? Just because it is a beautiful species.
You have known me for quite a while. About 10 years ago, I had up to 100 different species. But now, for the last 5 to 8 years, we have really specialized in different species because that allows for sustainable work. That means I am actually relatively independent from the outside and can continue to work with my own offspring. And you can simply, when you use what I call room systems, say that I have a room for certain species, then you can really adjust the temperature and so on to make it ideal.
And those are also species, of course, Poecilotheria metallica, which is something that is always popular, a beautiful tarantula.
Of course, I would say the economic component also comes into play in this business. You have to consider how to be efficient, and to work profitably, it makes more sense to specialize. What I have here now is a Poecilotheria subfusca, so black, yellow, white, and cream-colored contrast. These are animals from Sri Lanka, and this is actually my favorite Poecilotheria species. Now you might be wondering why I have such a strange thing on my arm. I just got a tattoo yesterday and had a beautiful large Poecilotheria subfusca done here. Exactly, because they are just incredibly fascinating and beautiful. They have really captivated me for many years.
So especially the Poecilotheria are relatively aggressive, and that means their bites are supposed to be quite potent in terms of venom.
That is actually the case. So Poecilotheria is certainly the genus whose venom has the strongest effect on males. So what I just did, we do for the reason that I can relatively well predict what the animal is doing, how it moves. But one should definitely not approach it with bare hands or handle it carelessly. I just did that earlier. Because the venom of such a Poecilotheria causes really strong pain and also flu-like symptoms, chills, for several days to even weeks can result from it. So really be careful there. Even if I am handling any animals here, please never try this at home. I have been doing this for quite a while, and I know exactly how the animals are. This surprised me a little because I might have had some concerns at that moment that they might actually appear, both the spiders and snake. If you know the animals, you can relatively well estimate how they will react next. If you don't do anything reckless, then the risk remains within limits. If you turn around here again, maybe take another look over there. There we have our males now.
A nice picture here. So here are all males.
Exactly, here are males of Poecilotheria metallica, just like here and here in different stages. And as soon as the males are adult, we practically catch them out. We can see that here, for example. These are adult males, sexually mature males, and they then go in here, one after the other, to the females.
Okay.
And then breeding will be done again.
Urs, first of all, 1,000 thanks for the really such an exciting, cool tour. Really great. As just hinted, we will do an extra episode on Theraphosa. You can look forward to it. Dear community, feel free to leave your comments below. Like, thumbs up if you liked it. If you say, hey, cool, finally tarantulas again, great topic, then thumbs up. And otherwise, see you in the next episode. Check out the tarantulas.